We went and saw the eclipse. We went to the Path of Totality in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, and saw the solar eclipse. Welcome to Truly Terrified, Paranormal versus Physics, where we talk about some really weird stuff and Joe the scientist explains how it's not possible, or maybe it is. I'm Lynn and...
I'm Joe.
Oh, it was so much fun to go and see the eclipse. This was our second eclipse.
Yeah. Well, there were
total eclipse.
Ones
yeah.
long time ago, but they weren't total, right?
I don't remember.
Or do you remember?
I don't remember another total eclipse. Now, when I was a kid, I remember there being eclipses and us going outside and stacking up old negatives, like photographic negatives, and looking at the sky. But I don't think they were total eclipses.
It got dark?
I don't remember that at all.
Not like really dark.
I don't remember that at all. So the first one that was total eclipse that I remember clearly was in 2017, and we went to St. Joseph, Missouri to see it. And that was really cool.
That was really cool.
This one was really cool in another way.
Yeah, in a different way.
So traveling to Poplar Bluff, Missouri, I expected there to be more traffic. There was not very much traffic. We were going the night before. We'd scoped out a parking lot at a trailhead, got there, slept there, and in the morning, what do you say? About 10 cars were there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'd say 7.
Okay, so it was a group of people that came to that same parking lot, and there was room for more people. It's not like there were people that drove by.
Yeah, there was plenty of room.
The neatest part about that is that other than the van full of children, which probably that was a logistics issue why they went there instead of someplace else, because you wouldn't want to be caught in traffic to go to a public viewing place.
Yeah,
and, whatever.
I also suspect that a lot of people couldn't make it to where they were going.
Yeah, but every single one of those people there, even the people that were having weird conversations and wandering around from person to person, every single person there was there because they wanted to see the eclipse. Mm-hmm. Not because they thought they were going to be raptured, which is insane.
Yeah.
Or that they thought it was something terrifying happening that was retribution by God for our sinful ways, and not because it was going to be a social event. They were there because they wanted to see the eclipse, and that was really cool. So at this trailhead, we had walking trails, and we went for walks. There was no restroom, so that was challenging, but all in all, it was okay. And leading up to it, I think, what was it, about an hour that we could watch the occlusion happening? Was it about an hour?
It was like it's like 12:40 or something.
Oh, so it was more than an hour.
It started.
It was about an hour and 10 minutes.
And then we left at 1:20 or something.
No, 2:20.
2:20 or something like that.
And it was still going on.
2:20.
It was still going on.
Yeah, it was for a long time. We were on the highway.
Yeah.
We had already gotten gas when I finally said,
Yeah.
So let's maybe describe why each was cool in their distinct ways. So the one in 2017, I had encouraged us to go to Kansas City, which I thought was a mistake. Like afterwards, I thought, I should have found a different place along the Path of Totality, like in Illinois or whatever. And the reason is because it was very cloudy. Like, you couldn't even see which direction the sun was.
That is true.
It wasn't initially. Like, you could see the sun initially. Mm-hmm. You could see it through faint, like sparse clouds. Mm-hmm. But then it just got worse and worse. And then when the one in 2017 actually started, like the shadow was getting, there was a lot of occlusion, it like dropped the temperature and it started raining.
Yeah.
So it was completely...
It was a very different experience. Now, a good thing about going to the Kansas City area in 2017 was that we got to meet up with the Missouri people and everybody gathered there.
Yeah,
so that was
so people were more willing to go to Kansas City.
Yeah, they would not have driven to Indiana.
So to continue, because it was so cloudy, you just could not see the sun at all. But that's only half the experience because it gets really, really dark. And something we now know, it gets way more dark when it's cloudy.
Way more dark. And also, we couldn't see the horizon.
Yeah.
And so we had none of that.
Actually, I do remember saying even, it's weird because the light is coming from the horizon.
Yeah.
And we were in a parking lot. There were the lights that are triggered by the ambient light in the parking lot. They came on. So it was like it was dark. It was like it was nighttime, like midnight.
Yeah.
No moon.
No moon.
No
nothing.
sun.
Yeah. It was completely dark. And Daniel was standing next to me. And I looked at him and I said, oh my God, I cannot even see you.
Yeah, it was hard to even see a few feet in front of you.
And that's what I expected. I expected it to be pitch black again.
It actually doesn't make sense to expect that. Because
I know.
I was expecting it too. But it doesn't make sense because in popular media, you just look at pictures. It's not like that.
I know. But that part of it, of this eclipse, the 2024 eclipse, was disappointing.
Yeah, well, so it's disappointing because we didn't know. Like, if we went into it again, we wouldn't be disappointed.
Right.
But so now, the one the other day, there was other details we noticed.
Yes, and so we got to see some really
for
cool
instance, the shadows. You don't know if there's clouds.
Yeah.
There are no shadows.
And also, we were in a parking lot before.
Yeah,
there was nothing. It was nothing.
Yeah, so there was not like leaves, so you couldn't really see that. There was other sources of light, so it would have cast their own shadows.
Right.
The shadow thing, I'll just say briefly, when you have a point source of light, a point source, zero dimensional, but it's producing light. And especially when it's very far away, so all the light beams are essentially coming in parallel. So you have light beams all coming in parallel, and then you have something occluding them. The shadow produced by that point source will be perfectly crisp. It will be either you're in the shadow or you're not in the shadow. There will be no like 50% shadow. And that's true arbitrarily far away from the source of occlusion. You go a light year away. You're either in the shadow or you're not in the shadow. However, the sun is not a point source. It's a disk. From our perspective, it's a disk. It's far enough away the light rays are all coming in parallel. So imagine this. You have 2 point sources and they're close by. When you occlude them, you have different regions. You have a region outside the shadow, which is 100% unoccluded. That's 100% of the light's getting through. You have certain regions where it's 50% occlusion because that's one of the point sources is not being blocked by the occluder. And then you have a region where 0% is coming through. And they may be disconnected regions, but so if you put your hand up and you had like 2 very, very far away point sources of light, then you would have what looks like 2 shadows that are like 50% occluded each. So like 50% shadows that are overlapping. You have in the center where they overlap, it's complete shadow. Now, basically, a disk, the sun, is just a ton of little point sources, continuous, you know? So with that, if you like put your hand up, there's going to be points in your shadow where there is 100% occlusion, 100% shadow. But there are also points nearby where the shadow is continuously changing. So like if you look at a place within the shadow which is 100% occluded and you go towards the edge where it's not occluded, the edge of the shadow, you get to a point where you're basically like 0% occluded, but you're actually gaining light. Like there's a 1%, 2%. It varies continuously until you get to the edge where then you go to completely outside the shadow.
And the effect was almost a 3D effect.
So if you take like a shape out of the disk of the sun, then the shadow is affected in a way you wouldn't expect. Like in the eclipse, you're taking another disk out of the sun's disk. It's the moon. And they happen to be roughly the right size. And so you have this crescent shape. Before the moon fully occludes the sun, you have a crescent shape that's remaining of the sun. And so the shadows will be essentially as if you have a crescent-shaped light very far away. And that happens, the shadow produced by that happens to be like one side of the shadow is not sharp and one side is sharp, which is strange, but it makes sense when you look at it from a...
Right.
Like if you were to put your eye at any point on the shadow and look, what would you see? The sharp edge would be the closed side of the crescent. So like if you picture, it's the rounded side of the crescent, I believe, because as you move more into the shadow, your eye suddenly gets, or as you're moving out of the shadow, your eye suddenly is getting a lot more light because you're moving into the bulk of the crescent. But on the other side, it's soft because you're moving into the points of the crescent, which have a lot less, or producing a lot less light. And there's two of them. So it's the 50% thing again. And as you move into the shadow, you get less and less light until you're completely in it.
You could probably experiment and get a similar effect with just simply flashlights.
Yeah. So like if you took one flashlight, very, very strong flashlight, and then blocked it with like cardboard or something, and then cut a shape out of the cardboard, and it has to be pretty far away to get the light rays to be going parallel, then you can produce the same effect essentially. And we've actually all seen this when you have a bunch of lights all together. Like for instance, if you're when you're going down the highway and there are lights along the side, as you're moving, you'll see the lights producing this strange shadow that kind of shifts.
Yeah.
So one more thing about the shadow thing is if you make a shadow, like with your hand or something, doesn't matter what it is, and then you poke a small hole in the shadow, in the occluder. So like you make a small hole with your hand, then the region of the shadow, which was 100% occluded, so it was full black, now has a region in it that is not 100% occluded. If you were to put your eye within that region, which is not occluded, so you make a little hole with your hand and it's poking some light through, and if you put your eye into that light,
besides being blinded,
you don't want to look at the sun. You can only see one point on the sun. So you're looking at the point source that can go through that tiny hole and produce that one spot. And it just so happens that if you were to move your eye, it would make more sense. You're scanning the point source that's making the light, and because it's a shape that's making that's producing the light, you're actually scanning what shape it is. So what it will look like is the shadow will have the shape in it.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's a crescent.
Yeah.
So you'll have a little crescent within the shadow. Now, if you were to like walk in the woods, every place where there's an opening in the leaves will be producing a crescent. It's not like you'd expect how it would just get dimmer, everything gets dimmer. No, the shadows themselves change in a way you don't expect.
It's very, I would say eerie, except eerie implies that there's fear associated with it.
It's not
and
necessarily...
I didn't feel that way. It just felt odd.
I was saying awe.
Yeah.
So like in the literal sense.
In the literal sense of the word
so
awe.
You might be afraid of something that's awesome.
Or awful.
But it's more like its own thing.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, if you were on the ocean or something and something just immense, like 50 times bigger than the largest whale, swam up and then swam back down, you wouldn't necessarily be afraid. I mean, I'd be afraid because I hate the ocean. But maybe I've said this before, but there's in context and out context. In context is like everything you normally see in real life, normal everyday life, or even maybe strange things in real life, but like, you know, they're explainable, they're regular to some degree, but outside context are just different. Not just different, but like they're fundamentally like maybe mind-bending or crazy, or they're just not things you can describe in a typical sense.
Yeah.
And so the awesomeness of the sun being included, it really puts it in perspective that this is a gigantic ball of fire that you can't even look at. It's so bright. And here's a gigantic rock that's moving in front of it, just like your hand moves in front of a light.
Yeah.
It hits it home. That
I think so. And I think one of the things we talked about briefly on the way back is how I feel like I have a different relationship with the sun now.
Yeah.
Having watched that occur, it really did impress upon me the physical part of it.
Yeah, especially the brightness thing. Like, you don't realize it. Your eyes typically adjust pretty slowly. Sometimes you're in a dark room and you walk outside, it's really bright, but your eyes adjust. But it's a whole different thing when you're actually trying to look at the sun.
Yeah.
Like, the sun is so much brighter than anything.
It was...
Like, you can't see, like, with the glasses on, they block everything else out.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can see.
But here was the interesting thing. So I'm watching it, and instantaneously, when it was fully occluded by the moon, instantaneously, I could no longer see anything through the glasses. Took the glasses off, and you can stare right at it.
You can look directly at the sun.
It was
just
remarkable.
You can't actually see that.
It was
you can see the sun. You literally can see parts of the sun.
Yeah.
The corona is considered part of the sun, and the solar prominences, which you can literally see, just look at. They're tiny pinpricks of like red and white light, but you can physically see them. They're cool enough that they're not blasting your eyes. I mean, they probably are blasting your eyes with like UV.
Yeah.
It's probably not a good idea to
My eyes still hurt.
Yeah, so, but the really crazy thing is the transition. Like, you're like, whoa, it's almost here. You know, the totality. You're looking through the glass, you can see the sliver, and you're like, well, you know, like, you can't look at it. Your body stops you, hopefully. And then suddenly, boom.
There it is.
Now you can look directly in that direction. You're looking, whoa, it's so cool. It's
and then all of a sudden, bam.
3.99 minutes, and then boom.
Yeah.
You can no longer look at it.
Yeah, when it does that wedding ring thing, and then bam, you cannot look at it. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the stories that I read and some of the information that was given that I didn't see beforehand, and I wish I had. For instance, depending upon the humidity in the air, the clouds in the sky, how much horizon you can see from where you are, it will change how dark you perceive it to be. And I say perceive because it's going to be the same darkness. It really is. But if you can see horizon, that light is going to filter into where you are.
So I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. A lot. The main factor, I think, is like you said, how you perceive it. But your eyes are actually constantly adjusting. If you were to immediately go from a state before the eclipse, before any occlusion at all, to 50% occlusion, it would be like, whoa, it's really dark.
Yeah.
And go from no occlusion to full occlusion, so into totality, from nothing, like in a second or instantly, it would be pitch black, besides like the horizon, which you could see, if you can see it.
Yeah. Coming home was an absolute frickin' nightmare.
Yeah, it was some of the worst traffic I've ever seen.
I have never seen anything
for a
like that
very
before.
long distance, too.
I mean, without there being an accident. Because that one time we were in Texas and there was an accident, several accidents.
It was just the sheer number of cars that made... I mean, there's natural tendencies for how traffic flow, and it was at that limit massively.
So a 4-hour trip took 8 hours. There were cops continuously along the route. I suppose the idea was that they were directing traffic There was only one place where I actually saw them directing traffic. I think the main thing they served to do was make everyone put on their brakes because they're thinking, why are there cops there with lights?
Yeah, every time there was just a...
And then it would be this huge slowdown, and it was horrible. It was absolutely mind-numbingly horrible.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
It was pretty bad.
But it didn't make it not worth it or anything.
No. So if I had it to do over again, I would have, and originally I think we talked about this, I would have just stayed another day.
Yeah, it probably is a better idea to just not try to go.
Just figure, and because everybody else would have cleared out of there.
You wouldn't even really have lost that much time. So like we left at 2:20 or something like that. The 4 hours we lost.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to sleep early in the evening, you wake up early in the morning, you drive 4 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally, you only lose like 2 hours or something.
Yeah. The biggest problem to me would have been eating any more tortillas with peanut butter on them. I was so sick of tortillas with peanut butter on them.
Well, we could have gone into town, I suppose.
Yeah, except I think in town was probably pretty awful. You know,
True,
they had astronauts
it was probably
there.
worse than town.
It was probably really awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was, the festivities were still going on by the time when we left. They were still doing their party thing at the high school or wherever it was. The next total eclipse is
I remember it being a really
in Spain.
Strange. Well, no, it's like it's really strange. I can't even picture how it works. But it's like Iceland and Greenland and Portugal and Spain. I just saw a list of the countries or the areas, and it's really weird.
That is weird. Okay.
Does it show it, the map?
It just goes to here. That's weird. It just goes to now. Future eclipses, NASA. That should help me. Okay, this total solar eclipse, April 8th. More solar eclipses. October 2nd. That's an annular one, though. So describe what an annular eclipse is.
So an annulus is a ring. I think the etymology is originally like literally a ring.
So it just means a partial eclipse?
So imagine the moon is a little bit smaller than the sun, then it moves in front of the sun. You have instead of a crescent, you have a full ring.
Okay.
You have an annulus, you have an annular eclipse.
So that's in October. I'm not looking at a map, I'm just looking at a list, and it does say North America. So I don't know where in North America.
Is it like Canada? And then, because from what I saw, it was a really strange collection.
It says South America, Antarctica, Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and North America. So then the next one after that is March 29th, 2025. That's a partial. So who cares? September, not that that sounds so flippant, but it's
still really cool. But
they are cool. And I've seen lots of them.
Yeah.
September 21st, 25. That's Australia, Antarctica, and Pacific Ocean. February 17th, 26 is another annular. And in August 12th, 2026, so in a little over 2 years, it will be visible. A total solar eclipse will be visible in Greenland, Iceland, Spain, Russia, Portugal, and then the rest of the world, it's a partial eclipse.
What the hell? How?
I don't know.
Get that. Why? How? Does Spain stick out really far? Like, does it stick out very west from like France and...
I'm trying to think how that
UK?
would be in a small area of Portugal.
We really need a map because
We need a map.
Oh,
that's
my God.
how.
What the hell?
Isn't that cool?
So it's the planet rotating.
Uh-huh. And it's so high up.
And that is... So it's like a circle.
Uh-huh.
But you're bending a little as the planet rotates.
Yeah.
That's really weird.
That's really neat.
The rest of Europe must feel pretty left out.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's like it conspired to not let them see that.
Yeah.
But they can all go to Spain, so
yeah,
Spain will get some tourism, and then the rest of the countries will have horrible traffic. Well, I don't know. Maybe they'll mainly have like trains and stuff. I don't know.
Okay, so I'm looking at the map of the eclipse that's going to take place in August of 2026. And what it does is it appears to start, well, I don't know where it starts. It either starts in Russia or it starts in Spain. And it goes up over the North Pole, swings around, comes through Greenland, then Iceland, and then ends up in Spain.
Yeah. So it would make far more sense if you looked at it on a globe.
If you looked at it on a globe, it would make more sense. Looking at a flat map, it looks like the skies have gone insane, but that's what's going on. If I could swing it, I would love to go to that. It's a damn good excuse to go to Spain. I don't want to go to Greenland. I don't want to go to Iceland. I sure as hell don't want to go to Russia.
I think if you were very into eclipses, it would be incredibly neat to go and see eclipses all over the world.
Yeah.
But it's pretty impractical. I mean, so I have to say, an eclipse is literally just a shadow.
Yes, it is. However, to me, that sense of the sun being an object, and the moon being an object, that's profound.
So this brings up another topic that I could probably go on for a long time.
Please do not. Please.
And here it is in the short form: is basically everything you experience in day-to-day life, you see in day-to-day life, is the same sort of thing as it just being a shadow, the eclipse just being a shadow. You are seeing just stuff happening. It's not like there's necessarily any meaning to the stuff. Like you look at a wall or a TV or whatever, a person, there are like collection of atoms, whatever. They're just a collection of atoms, right? You have just a bunch of atoms, you have just a shadow, whatever. But on a different level, when you would actually start attaching meaning to things, there's no limit to how far you can take that. Like, a person is more than just a collection of atoms. The eclipse is more than just a shadow. And so it's like, if you really believe that, which is a fine thing to believe. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's very interesting. If you believe it's more than that, it's not just like, oh, it's just a shadow here that I'm experiencing. To me, it's more than just a shadow. There's the implication that even the things you're not experiencing have meaning, not even just counterfactual meaning, but like, you know, the idea behind a gestalt? So a gestalt it's like the cherry on top. The thing is more than just its components, you know? It's a collection of things or a system or whatever, but then there's like a soul to it that is more than just the assembly.
It's more than the sum of its parts.
More than the sum of its parts. So here might be an eclipse. Right now, there's an eclipse of the sun by the moon into space, into nothing. That has then meaning. You're not experiencing it. It doesn't matter that you experience it. And so potentially every combination of things, every combination of counterfactual experiences, you know, everything, even the things you're not experiencing, even maybe the things that aren't even happening, have gestalts attached to them. And again, it's like whether you say, okay, it has meaning to me or it has meaning universally. If it has meaning universally, that's crazy. So there's like in math, there's different like things, how big they get. Let's say you have 3 rocks or 3 marbles or something. What are all the possible ways you can rearrange the marbles? Or what are all the possible ways you can put 3 marbles into one bag? You can leave some of them out, but you know, you have 1 marble.
Different combinations.
It's number 1 or number 2 or number 3 or number 1 and 2 or number 1 and 3. Now imagine all of the different possible combinations of everything in every possible configuration. Which is really awesome. And so, like, when we talk about souls and stuff like that, that's one of the things you have to contend with. The eclipse itself potentially then has a soul, you know, a gestalt being a soul. And so that's how I choose to look at it. The eclipse is like the vibe to it, and the particular location you're at, and all the context of everything going around you is like its own thing, you know?
That was very beautiful. That was poetic. Our contact information is in the show notes. You can email us, text us, or even call and leave a 3-minute voicemail. And as always, if you have a story you want to tell, send it to us. Please share, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. And never be so terrified that you run from the sun, because there's no reason. There was nothing scary about it.